Hi, I'm Sean Morgan. I'm a professor at Fleming College, and I wanted to introduce to you ArcGIS Survey 123 today. I'd like to go through and just explain how it works, and in particular start using the Connect application that allows you to do really enhanced surveys in it. Now, survey, let me kind of just back up and talk about that because we typically are working in a geospatial industry. Survey actually means something special. It's usually high precision data acquisition. In this case, it's not. This is survey like, do you like pineapple on your pizza? And of course, I'm not going to open up that debate, but I wanted to at least introduce to you how this product works and give you an overview so that you can get started. Now, to use the product, you do have to have an account with an ArcGIS Online organization. If you do, though, you can sign in and get started. So let me just open up the Survey 123 website and we can take a look at it. Now I'm logged in right here, and the Survey 123 website from an owner of the survey's perspective will show all of the different surveys that you have available to you. And in this case, I've created this survey here using one of the templates. So let me just go ahead and open that survey. And there's a whole bunch of different settings in here about the survey. There's an overview, and I've already added one record just to test things out. There is a web designer that you can use to design the survey. However, as I said, I use the Survey 123 Connect application to be able to generate this survey, and I'll give you an overview of that. But if you're just getting started, using the designer that's web-based will allow you to get surveys up and running really quickly without having to install anything. The Survey 123 Connect application is something you have to go through and actually install on your computer. It uses Excel to create the form. I know that sounds kind of weird. You might think that the data is in Excel. It isn't. The actual form design is in Excel. There's different settings to be able to share this survey out with different people. You can use this site to analyze your data. You can also take a look at your data. And then there's some overview on the settings associated with it. So the Survey 123 website is in addition to ArcGIS Online's environment. It is a separate application. So Survey 123, let me just kind of give you a basic overview of how the product came about, just so you can understand kind of why it is the way it is. It was actually born out of the Esri Labs environment. And that's an environment where the staff at Esri recognize that there's some cool tech or there's a need. It's not coming out of a business decision. So the employees actually kind of play with the software and try to get something running. Well, Survey 123 is actually largely based on open source items underneath it. That's what's powering it. And in particular, there's this thing called the XLSForms. So XLS, as you know, is an Excel spreadsheet. And so these forms, what you do is in Excel, you design the form and then you're able to use that form as a way to collect data. And so we'll take a look at that in a couple of minutes, but let's first just turn our attention to actually opening up a survey, and we can take a look at how it works from a user's perspective. Now on the Collaborate page, you can see right here, there's a link, and it's a short-formed link to be able to open up this survey. And you can actually just copy the URL. You can use a QR code if you wanted to share this with people in the public, for example, or just open the survey a new tab. I'm going to do that. Now this survey is public, meaning that anybody can access it right now. But normally you can make surveys that are private, you can make surveys that are public, or you can make surveys that only you can access, whichever you'd like, the normal security inside of ArcGIS Online. And the survey itself, it's going to be updating some data on the ArcGIS Online environment. So again, this one's predefined. It has a date. It's meant for a tree inventory, so it has a date. You can specify a specific tree species, which I like white pine, eastern white pine, and then I can put it on a map. Now, there's actually 3 different ways to use a survey in Survey 123. I'm using the web version here, so it's just open up a web browser and you can go navigate to it. There's also native apps for your mobile phone. So if you are collecting data in the field, you can actually use your mobile phone to collect the data and use the GPS on the device itself. That allows you to be able to actually do the data collection in the field, which is really one of the major advantages of Survey 123. So normally I would be doing a tree survey in the field in front of the tree. I wouldn't be doing it in front of a computer. But nonetheless, it does work on the website as well. Now there is a third way of using the app, and that's a native app in a desktop environment. So it's like a Windows app that you can run. But I don't really use that one too often. I use the website if I'm on a computer. The one advantage of using the mobile version, though, is it can collect data offline. So you can be disconnected from your network and still collect data, and then submit that data once you get back online. Okay. So I'm going to enter a location here. We're going to use the location of the college. Maybe. There we go. Helps to type the right address in. Okay, so now we're actually at the college. We can change this to the imagery. And that way we can actually see some trees. Again, normally I wouldn't be doing it this way. I'd be doing it out in the field. So I'd be using the GPS on the device. So we're just going to, let's just take this tree right there. I'm assuming it's a white pine. It probably isn't, but you can see the lat and long gets added, and then I can add information about the point. So in this case, I can give it a location description. So I can also upload a photo of the tree. And again, if you're using the device, you can actually use the camera on the device to take the photo live and then actually upload it. But in this case, I'm just going to select a photo from my computer. Oop, I guess I can't upload that type. It's a web part. Let me get the right part, which is a JPEG. There we go. Okay. So now we have a JPEG uploaded, a nice photo of a tree. Again, not the one that I'm actually doing a survey for right now. I'm just doing this as a demo. So next is there's two sections, and these sections are collapsed. So I can actually expand the section and take a look at the content. And I can actually do the unit of measure, inches or centimeters. This survey has the ability of switching back and forth. I can select the size. I can actually specify the exact diameter at breast height. So this is a standard term in forestry. We're not going to explain it in this video, but there are explanations of how to do proper diameter at breast height calculations using the circumference of the tree. So we'll just enter 17 in here so it's in our range. The condition, I can also in the survey supply different types of conditions. And in this case, I can, when I say conditions, I don't mean this. I mean conditions to be able to show or hide fields. So I can say the tree is excellent, good, but watch what happens when I select fair. The survey actually expands, recognizing there are issues with this tree. So insect infestations and disease, in this case, might be an issue for this tree. So therefore, this would allow me to supply more information about the tree, but only if it is in fact fair or poor. So no, there's none of these, but yes, there's a hazard. And if you say yes to a hazard, you even get the ability to add more photos of that hazard. So a pretty flexible survey in this case. Then what maintenance work is needed. So you can check one or many of these. If you select other, you get an other box. So a pretty cool interface to be able to do this. And then surrounding area, similar interface. And then you can actually go and submit the survey. So that submission will end up inside of ArcGIS Online. and it ends up as just a normal hosted feature layer to some degree. Now, the best way to be able to manage and view the data that is coming in on the survey is using the Survey123 logged in administrative interface, and you can just go under the data tab right here, and then you can see the surveys. And so you can actually see the 2 surveys that I've actually done, including this one over here, which is the one that I just submitted. So pretty cool little interface to be able to review the data. And this shows pretty much the exact form that I just submitted. So you can go and view that data. Now, depending on how you have the collaborate settings set, so sharing the survey, I've made it available. Well, in this case, I said it was public, it wasn't. It's only to the Fleming College community. I can also share the results, same thing. So you have to be within the Fleming College environment to see these results. And then updating the survey, this one's a little bit different. Who can update it? There has to be a specific group that can update the survey if you wanted to. Typically, though, surveys are done individually. I'll show you different ways to be able to deal with that later. And then there's group settings, and again, no different than the update side. But share survey and share results are kind of the 2 big items to be able to select and change. So that allows you to have the survey inside of Survey123. Now let's switch over and go into ArcGIS Online's environment, and we can take a look at what the survey looks like there. So let me just log into ArcGIS Online. Okay, so in ArcGIS Online, you can see this is actually the survey that was placed in here. And there's a few items in here by default. One is this form. And that form, believe it or not, is that open sourced required item to be able to generate that form that you saw. So the XLSForms environment, it uses that to be able to get this. So if you downloaded this document, you'll actually get the original survey design that would have been in Excel. Even if you use the web interface, you can actually do that. You can actually grab the survey and switch to a Survey123 Connect using that. So a pretty cool little tip. That's a little bit more advanced. We're not there yet. The next is a hosted feature layer, and then a hosted feature layer view. And the reason we have a hosted feature layer view is because ArcGIS for security, if you have different security set on being able to submit surveys and you don't want the public to be able to see results, even though you want them to be able to submit, you have to have a different way to be able to view the data yourself. So it splits these up into 2 different units. So this one will have stakeholder on it, and the stakeholder item is meant to be used by anybody viewing this survey. So you can have the security set that everybody can view the survey, or only organizational people, or to a specific group. So it allows you to have some good security associated with it. Whereas the base hosted feature layer, the original one, that's the one that's actually used in the survey, and it's used to update it. So that's why you see these 2 there. Currently, I have them both set for organization, so therefore people can see and use either. So for this case, they're really no different. But if this one was public, this one would not allow you to actually look at the data. And so if you go and try to view this map in the map viewer, for example, and you notice no data showed up, and if I go to show table, it actually gives me an accessing data failed. That's by design. And that way people can't go look at someone else's survey. So let me just switch back. So that's why that one is there. That was the main one. So that one's really just for adding data into it. Whereas if I go and view this one in the Map Viewer Classic, The reason I'm using the classic viewer is because the newer viewer doesn't give you an error. It just doesn't work. And if you open up the stakeholder one, well, you can already see, first of all, there's 2 points on the map. And I can actually look at the data itself. Okay, so just a little tip if you're trying to look at the data inside of ArcGIS Online's main environment. Now let's kind of dive back to this form for a second and what's happening with this. Okay, so I'm going to switch over and take a look at the Survey 123 Connect application and how it works. Now, if you're in your survey, let me just close this, go back here. Let's go back to my surveys. And if you wanted to go create a new survey, it immediately gives you kind of these different options. So you can create a blank survey, you can use a template, or you can use Survey 123 Connect. So these two options are using the Web Designer. And the Web Designer, as I said, it's the easiest way to get started, but I want to concentrate directly on the Survey 123 Connect application for designing this form to collect the data because it's much more powerful. And as I said, it uses this XLSForms method of doing the data. So before I open this, let me just kind of show you what this XLSForms is, where it is, and get a little bit of base documentation on it. So as I said, the XLSForms is actually an open sourced item. And this website, xlsform.org, gives you the core documentation associated with the XLS form. But I want to give you a little bit of a caution about this website. This is the open sourced version. Esri has embedded this and made some changes that are proprietary. So not everything is exactly the same. But generally speaking, sometimes the Esri documentation can be a little bit lacking in understanding this. So this external website is a great resource just to have a base understanding. So the XLS form is basically an Excel spreadsheet. And so it's a whole spreadsheet. It's not even just a spreadsheet, it's a workbook. And there's multiple pages on that workbook, and they are used to configure the survey. And you have a whole bunch of different choices associated with this. So for example, here you can have the type, which is kind of like a field type. Then you have a name, which would end up kind of being like the field name. You have a label that's associated with how you'd like it to display to your user. And so that then is read by the Survey 123 app on your phone or on the website, and then it's actually formed as a form and allows you to do the data collection. And that data collection then targets, again in the ArcGIS Online environment, a hosted feature layer. So these different types of items have real power because you have a lot of configuration options and you're not bound by a graphic user interface. So you can also share your survey easily with other people, and I'll show you how to do that in a little bit. So there's also this choices area, and choices, so you can see this one that's right here, select one gender. So if you have gender here as the select one, it goes over to this list and then selects, okay, well, I want the list name of gender. Okay, so then these are the items that I'm going to enter as my value when I'm entering the survey, and the label is what I'm going to show to the user. And so this choices tab in the spreadsheet allows you to have many different choices in that case. That's a more complex type. You can just do today in this case, that's like the current date. It doesn't work in ArcGIS Online. Today is different. And then integer or just a straight string, so you can just have a free form text. But doing select ones allows you to have very canned values, which is good form design. Obviously, you want your users to be able to supply information in a really concise way, fast way, especially on a mobile device. You don't want them typing a whole bunch of stuff in, and you don't want typos. So having canned lists that the user must select from will really give your data good integrity, as well as be able to make the data collection more quick. So this survey website is great, but let's take a look at the actual survey that we used to be able to generate this. Now, if you wanted to start using Survey 123 Connect, it is a separate download. So you'd have to go get started here, and then it tells you to download Survey 123 Connect. You install it on your computer, and then you're able to go. But do check to make sure it's not already installed on your computer. It might be if you're working, for example, at the college. Once you have Survey 123 Connect, then you can actually use the app and get started with it. So let me just open up Survey 123 Connect. Okay, so now I've opened up Survey 123 Connect. So this app allows me to create those XLS forms, and it integrates with your desktop in your Excel. So you have to have Excel or an open source spreadsheet. I believe it works with open source. I have Excel, so I'll be using that. And then this also uploads it to ArcGIS Online's environment, creating the hosted feature layers, the form, and getting everything ready. So this is your main app to be able to handle all of the management of your Survey 123 environment. So first things first, you do need to have a login to your organization to be able to do anything with publishing your survey. So you can see that here I'm already logged in to the Fleming College environment. And here's the survey that I was actually going through and editing. So let's just open this survey by clicking on it. And it gives you a little preview of it. This isn't meant to do data collection. This is just meant to preview the survey. So it's reading the XLS form, generating the form as if it would be available on the website or in the app. It looks a little different depending on the environment you're using, but this is just kind of a basic preview. So it shows the survey as it would work. Okay, so with this, there's a whole bunch of different options over here on the side. There's XLSForm, which opens up Excel and allows you to start editing it. Update just simply refreshes this view. Let's say there's something that just didn't get right. You can just hit a refresh. You can open up the files directory and take a look at it, and then you can also publish it. And then there's some other settings inside of here. Well, first, just before I open it up, let's just take a quick peek at the files. So this is the files in it, and the one file that is absolutely core to your survey is your spreadsheet. So I know it's XLSForms. Excel files now are XLSX. It's a little bit different, but that's what they work with. And so this one file is actually what contains the logic for your survey form. So let's just open that, not through this interface. Let's just use the XLS form right here. The reason I'm opening up this one is then it's integrated with the Survey 123 environment. Okay, so this is the actual form. Now you can see in here there's a whole bunch of different options you have available. This is the actual form. There's my choices area. There's different settings. There's also these blue tabs which have more meta about the survey. So there's version information, question types, appearances. This is like documentation and field types. So these are actually documentation about the survey. So it's a nice, relatively recent addition to Survey 123 to be able to have the documentation in it. But the main item or sheet that you should be looking at is the survey itself. So let's just kind of dissect the survey, take a look at what it would be inside of the app. And let's just go back to the survey. And let's just open up this survey again. So you can actually jump into it directly. And then up here, there's a little share link. And then you can just click on this. So we're going to open up the survey as if we're starting a survey, just so we can see it in the web form as well as we're going through each question. Okay. So back here, date and time. That's the type of data. And you can see that there's a list of a whole bunch of different types of data that you can grab. There's very simple forms like text and integer, decimal, no different than a normal database. Date, time. So this is just the date. So it's not the date and time that's getting stored, it's only the date in this case. So you can choose if you need the time in there as well. And the label is what's shown. So the name is going to be the field name, and the label is what's going to show up as the label for selecting it. So this label right here is what's showing up. But if I go to the content, take a look at this actual hosted feature layer. Let's go to view the item details here. And we'll take a look at the data. And let's just take a look at the fields. You'll notice that that field is a date type, and the field name is date. Back in the survey here, date is coming from this value. So you can see the field name is different than the label. So just be careful with that, because sometimes the name isn't what's going to be exported. You're going to get the label is what the export is. So if you're trying to get the data out of ArcGIS Online's environment. So just something to be aware of, but this is what's prompting the user. Now the next one is that more complex type. Select one tree species or other. So this one's a much more complex, advanced option. But select one is a type that you can select in the list. So if I just go down here to a end group and you just go select one, and then it says list name. You have to actually go in here and modify this portion to make it whatever list name is for it to work. Okay, so that's what you have to do. Now, whatever would have to be an option under choices. So you can see there's tree species here. There's also units and DBH. So it's just a long list. So when you select, if I had that whatever, it would be like this. It'd be whatever. And then I could say option 1 and then option 1. So why do I have it twice? So there'd be only, so whatever. Let's make another option. Option 2, option 2. Okay, so that this would give me two options then. The reason I have two, if I go right up to the top, there's a huge tree list here, unfortunately. One is the label, and the other is the name. So the name is what's going to be put as the value when you store it in the ArcGIS Online environment. The label is what's showing up on our survey right here. So these are labels, but what's actually stored in the database is that other value. So the label, this is what's stored or shown to the user, but this is what's stored in the database itself. So I chose the white pine, western, so we want eastern white pine. There it is, eastern white pine. So this value, Pinster, would be what's actually stored in my database in this case. So if we go back to this, we go to the table. So tree species, you notice this is showing up the full data, but the value that's actually getting stored behind the scenes is that. So if we exported this, it would show up. So let's just go into fields, tree species, and the tree species, you can see it actually created a domain automatically to store the data. So this is effectively like a lookup. So even though it's showing you that it's that full value, technically, if I exported this data, it would only show me the values that I've actually entered. So a pretty cool way of Esri to be able to manage the data efficiently. So what it's showing you in the interface isn't always exactly what's stored on the database. So it's doing a good job of being able to have efficient data storage in this case. So rather than storing the entire long description, it has this only once, and then it uses this to store it. And every time it wants to display this, it shows the longer value based on that domain. So yeah, it's a pretty cool interface. So that's the advantage of the Survey 123 environment in the Esri. Rather than using the open source versions of the XLSForms, it really integrates well with the Esri ecosystem. Now just to show you the data, this is the data downloaded into a CSV file. And you can see that entry that I've just stored right here. Where are we? It's Pinster right there. So that's the data that got exported. So you can see the actual value that was stored inside of the database. When you export it, you're going to get that. You're not going to get the label. Although it doesn't give you the field names when you export it, it gave you the description. So just be careful on sometimes depending on how you do it, you can get the field names versus the names. So you can get the labels showing up inside of the exported item sometimes too. Okay, so let's jump back to our tour of this. So those are the choices. So you can see how these are applying. So select one, let me go up to this. Select one species or other. So other allows you to have to enter something else if you needed to. GeoPoint is kind of one of the more special cases. GeoPoint, and there are a couple of different geography types inside here. There's GeoTrace and GeoShape as well. So line, point, and polygon effectively. The GeoPoint is the X and Y. So this automatically gives you that interface to be able to add the data itself. So you can see this GeoPoint right here. Allows you to either click on the map, it allows you to geocode to be able to find a location, or if you had a GPS, you can see it's not able to find my location because my device doesn't allow it. There's no GPS in it. But if you're using something like a mobile device that has a GPS, it could use that and would give you a precision accuracy and be able to actually determine what's there. So this is another cool part of the app. If you have a high precision GPS, like survey grade, it would actually use that device and give you very high accuracy as well. But generally speaking, the 5-meter-ish accuracy of a phone is usually all you need for this type of survey. So the next is text. It's just straight text. You can just enter text. There's an image, and an image allows you to upload, so it looks like this in the app. See, photo of tree, and then you can actually go and submit the image. So the image in the ArcGIS Online environment ends up becoming effectively, let me just go back to my content here. The image itself is just an attachment. So if I go to the data, you can actually see that all the way over here. So photos and files, and there's one attachment, and if I click show, it shows me that attachment, and I can view it really quickly. So there's the actual image that I uploaded for that white pine. So it's just an attachment. That's all it's doing. Again, it's integrated into the Esri ecosystem very seamlessly. The next is a group. In this case, what this is basically saying is group these items together. So you can see from here down to here is a group. Now whoever authored this example created spaces in here so it's a little bit easier to read. So you can actually format your survey so it's easy to read from an administrator's perspective, but that doesn't really have any effect on the end solution. But this group will group itself between those two values to show like this. And in this case, the group has been told to be collapsed by default. You can also make it open by default. So you can see that right here. So group begin. And you can see one of the appearance options over here is compact. And you can see over here on the question types, you have all of the different question types, and it shows you what options are available and how it works inside of Survey 123, whether it's available on the field app, on the web app. So the field app is your mobile version. The web app is the version I was using. So some things work differently depending on the environment. And then there's also appearances, allowing you to go and choose how things will appear. So the documentation is all here to be able to look and understand how to actually build this. So in this case, it's a compact survey. And the cool thing is because they've designed this Excel spreadsheet in a way that it's understanding how to grab all this other information, it actually gives you the options right in here. So it's a really nicely designed interface to be able to do your form. That's why they used Excel. They didn't create their own application to design this because Excel has all the power to be able to do this. The resulting file, the XLS file, is then used to actually generate the form. So pretty cool way of being able to deal with it. The next is select one unit. So now we're back on a select one. So select _1 space unit. If we go to choices, we can find the unit section. dBH unit. And there's two units in this case, inches and centimeters. And then there's dBH, which has specific appearance, and you can see there's defaults for select one unit. And over here, there's a filter, and I thought there was another setting in here. So there's a lot more things you can do with the data. And you can have conditions. So there's more advanced functionality to be able to control how it works. I'm not going to go through these in detail here, but I just wanted to at least show you that there are more configuration options as you move over. Select one condition, select one yes, no, and select one yes, no again. It's duplicating or reusing one of the select ones, so you can actually do that. So these Boolean yes, no questions are separate fields, but they're using the same select one condition from the choices option here. They're both using the yes, no option. So wherever it is, maybe it's up at the top. Yeah, right there, yes, no. The image, again, a second image if you need it. Select one, and then the end group. Okay, and then select multiple, sorry. Select multiple works a little bit differently than the other ones. So let's go take a look at select multiple. This is this field here where you can check box different items. So a pretty cool way of being able to deal with it. But I want to give you a little bit of a tip on this, how this data actually is shown inside of the Survey 123 environment, or rather in the data. So what maintenance is needed? So this actually shows up. I think I can make this bigger. There we are. Maybe. There we are. It shows up as a comma separated value. So technically, this is not good database methodology. This should be a lookup table because it's a many-to-one relationship. This should be broken up. But this is the way Survey 123 does it because it's a single table. So this violates one of the normalization rules of a database. Just be aware of that. So if you are exploding this out into a different database, you may need to take this data and create a second table and comma separate it and put one entry per record related back. Usually you would use, and it's hiding these fields, show hide fields, the global ID, and there's also other fields, the creator, edit date, editor, object ID, all of these fields do exist inside of this. So the global ID is a unique identifier globally. It's not specific, whereas the object ID always starts at 1. So if multiple people are collecting data in different Survey 123s using the same form and you want to combine the data, the object ID would collide. You would have two values for one. But the global ID is always unique. Pretty cool. So therefore you can actually use this as your unique identifier and won't have any issues with having data collisions or duplicate data in the primary key. And then you can use this and split it up and create one row or one record for each one of these with the same primary key, the global ID, and therefore it would work. So don't use the object ID. Another thing you do have access to when you're publishing the data, while I'm here, as soon as you create the data, if you were logged into the ArcGIS Online environment, it will record who created the data, and if there was an edit on the data, who edited the data after. So the edit date and creation date will all be there. So you can see those two dates are the same right now. That's simply because I created the data, and that was also the last time it was edited. So really easy options to be able to use to track who's going on what. Just beware that's hidden by default when you're looking at it in ArcGIS Online's environment. Those fields are hidden, but they do exist. There are the metadata associated with it that is automatically collected. Okay, so back into my survey. The next is another group. Select one condition, yes, no, and then end group. So as I said, there are many different question types. The most common are simply text, integer, decimal, date, time, type. Select one and select multiple. Those are kind of the main ones that are usually used, but there are many different other types that are here. You can do really complex things like a calculate field, so you can actually grab fields from the user. You can have a value entered, and then you can do a calculation based on that value and put it into a second field. And I'll even show you another cool little tip. If you go over here in this list, there is bind type. So these fields allow me to tell Esri, yeah, the data that you're going to be collecting will be of this type in the field, in the form, but then store the data in ArcGIS Online as this type. If you don't specify this, it'll try to figure it out. It'll, put text in text and numbers in numbers, that type of thing. But if for some reason you want to store the data in a slightly different way, you can use this. So that way you can actually bind it to a specific type. Oops, sorry, it's this field that I wanted to bind it to. I was showing the wrong one. So you can bind it. And you'll notice that there's this null one at the end. If there is an entry in this list, it always creates a field in ArcGIS Online for it, unless you have it as null. If you have that as null, it won't. So if you wanted to do a calculation on, let's say, 3 values, and then have the result saved, but not the 3 original values, you can set the inputs for those 3 calculate fields as null, and then only you have your calculate field store. So null allows you to basically say, don't store this, just show the field. Okay, but you can also force it to the Esri types that are there. You can also change the length of fields. So in particular for strings, if they need to be a certain size, you can make it more efficient. And you can also generate an alias in ArcGIS Online's environment. So there's a whole bunch of different settings in here. I'm not going to go through all of them, but you can start seeing this is pretty powerful. And the defaults usually work, but you can get started and play with the defaults. And then if it's not right, take a look at these different options to understand what's there. So the question types are a great source to start. The appearances are a great place to start. And then there's also the field types that are here. There's a reference, in particular for formulas and different options. And there's reserved words that you should never use inside of your survey because they will cause issues, right? So the survey itself, the XLS document has some documentation in it as well as the settings. So survey choices, and then there's also settings. And then you can see here that this is actually going and changing some different things. So the form title, the name of the field, or sorry, the name of the survey and what it's going to be doing, the submission URL. If you had to do something different, we're not doing this. If you're using Portal or something like that, you can actually change that. Default language, version style, namespace, that's fine, it's Esri. But yeah, lots of cool settings. So this survey was one that we downloaded and started with, and I encourage you to take a look at this survey as a base, but it might not meet your needs. If you do make a change to the survey for whatever reason, and you click save, you'll watch this application rereads your survey and resyncs what's there. But if you make a mistake, it'll give you an error in the interpretation, and so you have to go back and forth. So you're kind of using the Excel to drive the Connect, which is running behind the scenes. Okay, so if you do see any errors, you'll know to fix them. But let's close this and let's go back and let's just generate a new survey from scratch just so you can see it done, and then we'll publish it really quickly. So new survey, and you get a whole bunch of different options. You have to enter the form. Be careful, enter the form name appropriately right away because it can't be changed easily later. And you'll see the layer or table name backing this in ArcGIS Online will get set, and that can't be changed. It has to be unique within the organization. Okay, so you can see this one's already taken. So video, you can use just a template. There's samples. There's ones available in the community. There's your own survey. You can repurpose one that's there. You can use some from your organization. You can grab feature services that already exist and try to generate a survey to update them. And then finally, a file. And this is what I was saying earlier. If you have that original Excel document from another survey, you can actually generate a new survey from that file. So that one file is really important. So right now we're just going to use the advanced template. And my screen's a little small, so I can't see the create survey in the bottom right there. But we'll hit create survey. And now we have the survey created. It opens up Excel automatically, and it has these basic things added by default. So it has a text and then a select one, yes, no. Under choices, you can see the yes, no one. There's also this rating, which isn't being used. The settings are bare bones, but this is kind of the starting point for you to be able to add your own survey items. So then you can start adding them. So I can add a text. The name for this one would be how are you today? Sorry, that's an invalid name because it's a field name. This is the label, how are you today? And the name needs to be a simple name that's appropriate for a field name. So today, or how today, let's call it that. There. Okay, so the name is the field name. And then you can go through and fill this in as you want. You can do an integer, which is just a number, age, how old are you today? Then we can ask it, for example, a geopoint of location. Where are you today? See the theme here? Select one list. So what are my choices? So let's do rating. List name, so we'll do rating. Let's call it rating. What is your rating today? And as you're filling this in, if you hit save, this will update. And I encourage you to do this frequently to be able to see what's happening in the Survey 123 Connect to make sure what you've done is proper. Because if you make a mistake somewhere, it'll error. Now this position source accuracy is normal, but just because I don't have anything in there. But let's say we made a mistake and didn't pick the select one appropriately. If I go save now, when it reads that, it's going to try to find that. And it says no, list name not in choices, radi 123. So to fix that, I have to go to choices. Radi 123, I think is what I said. Oh, thanks Excel for trying to help me. There, okay. We'll save that. And now it knows how to line up that select one with that. Oh, I didn't do it right. I still didn't do it right. So what did I name the type? Rati 123 choices 123. Okay. Oh no, I did get it to work. Okay, sorry. I just hadn't cleared that error message it was there from before. Okay. So you can see how you can build your survey up. So let's just pretend this is my survey. Let's go publish it. We can close this. Back in here, everything's working fine. It's happy with the survey. So now what we can do is go publish. And so this means you have to be logged into your organization to publish. You have to have publish rights. And it gives you this warning. This is a really important distinction in Survey 123. Once you publish a survey, it changes a little bit. You can't change other things associated with it because you're writing an actual hosted feature layer, and that hosted feature layer may or may not work properly if you change things on the fly. So if it's storing data in a particular column already, you can't delete that column, you'll lose the data. If you try to add a new column, it generally is fine. If you try to change the type of a column, again, it doesn't like it because it might needs to manipulate the data. So be sure you have your survey right, then publish it. And if you are just playing with this and want to keep making changes, sometimes it's easier to delete your survey and start again. You can reuse your Excel spreadsheet because you can open up that XLSForm, save it somewhere else, and create a new survey from that base. That's fine, but don't try to force it to make changes to your actual hosted feature layer. So, and sometimes it breaks the hosted feature layer. The connection between the two isn't quite right. So you have to generate a new survey from that Excel file. So there's some options in here. Generally, the options, the default are fine. And then when you say publish, what it does is it goes and creates the folder, as I said at the beginning, and I'll give you a tour on this. It creates a folder for it in your environment. It creates the feature service, the hosted feature layer. It updates it, creates any data that's associated with it, and then enables the security around it, uploads the web form, and then it creates a basic web map just to be able to use this and take a look at it. So let's go into ArcGIS Online and take a look at what it did. So we go to Content, and it created a folder. If you remember, that folder name will be the same name of my survey, and I don't think I named my survey anything. Oh, there it is. Example video demo. There it is. I did name it. If you don't name it, it ends up being Untitled Survey, and that's not good. But example video demo, you can see I have 3 items in this list. So there's the form, the web map, and the hosted feature layer. And if we open up the hosted feature layer and view the item details, the data, of course, it'll be empty, but the fields that were created were all the fields that I talked about. It does add some extra fields like I also mentioned. The object ID and global ID will automatically be added, as well as the metadata for creator and editor. So those fields are automatically added around it. So then it has the field name as well as the label of the data. And if we go and try to collect data using it, so back into here, we'll go back to my surveys. You can see my example video. I can look at the data, analyze it, share it. I can edit it, but again, I can't edit it using the web interface because of this, but let's just go into the survey. There's no data in here, so it'll of course show everything's blank, which makes sense. But I can go open the survey and take a look at it. And because I'm the owner of the survey, I can actually go fill the survey in. I'm not going to do that right now. I don't want to save that one. But one thing I can't do, if you tried to access this survey, it wouldn't work because by default, Share Survey is set that nobody else can access it. So it's only you can access a survey when you first publish it. You need to make the decision on who can access this survey. So if you choose, for example, members of your organization, they still need to log in, or a specific group, they can do that. And then what can they do? Only add new records, add and update records, or add, update, and delete records. You can choose which one can work with. If you have only add new records, that means that you won't be able to view this hosted feature layer inside of the apps directly. I'll show you that. So let's save. It's going to force this update. Sure. So it tries to keep the items managed. Typically, don't go and change permissions inside of this environment, inside of the ArcGIS Online environment. Don't try to change the permissions here. You can see it's already set these as organizational. And if I try to view this, it's going to access data failed. And that is because this right here, only add new records. So add and update records, read access enabled, that's why that setting is there. So if you want to generate that second item inside of ArcGIS Online, so let me go back. So you'll notice that's missing. If I go to my tree example, it had this hosted feature layer view as well. That's called stakeholder. The reason that exists, and it doesn't exist here, is because I haven't configured the share results. So right now, nobody can take a look at the results other than me. So if I want that to work, I have to actually do this by allowing, again, I'm using my organization to be able to see the data, and this then will go and generate that view automatically, which is just basically pointing back at the data. Just refresh that screen. And now you can see I have a hosted feature view, which points back at this, and that one has different permissions. So while this one didn't open inside of the web map, this one will open in the web map, even though there's no data in it. So hopefully that gives you a tour of the Survey 123 environment, gets you started with using it. The best resources are on the Esri website, but as I pointed out, there are some open source technologies underneath the Survey 123 environment. Although they've done a great job of being able to have all of their data on the survey itself, on the form itself. So you can actually look at the help in these blue tabs to be able to get more information about your survey. There's still some quirks because it's kind of working in Excel and then this Connect and then the web environment. So just get familiar with how it works. I find sometimes it takes a little while to get a survey right. You might have to delete it and recreate it. Know that the files that are here, if you want to repurpose a survey or start a new survey from an existingly developed survey, an easy way of doing that is just grab this Excel document. You can double click and even open this directly inside of Excel. It's no different. It's just not linked when you're using the Connect. You can copy this and then you can even generate a new survey. It's a new survey from a file and then point it at that XLS form. So that way you're basically generating a new survey from an existing XLS form that already exists. And that's a great way to kind of evolve a survey or create a different version of it without affecting the original. So thank you very much for your time. I hope you enjoyed this. Definitely play with this product. It's an awesome product. And install the web app. It is available on Android as well as Apple. And happy surveying.